All right, good morning. I'm Max Moland. I'm in the Office of Traffic Engineering in the Traffic Safety section. I'm going to be talking about a story map that I put together for a safety evaluation that we did for reduced conflict intersections. I will let everyone know up front that I'm kind of new to GIS. I'm almost done with the Esri Intro to GIS courses, so it's about time that I was asked to present to this group of GIS power users. I'm just obviously just kidding. I recently used this ArcGIS story map application to build the story map, and Bob asked me to present on it. So my inexperience with GIS should give you a sense of how easy it is to build something like this, and that should give you some confidence there. But before we get into the story map itself, since I have you all here, I'm going to talk for a few minutes about reduced conflict intersections, also known as RCIs, also known as R-cuts, also known as J-turns. They're an intersection with many names, but they are an at-grade intersection design used in high-speed multi-lane expressways. Their goal is to improve safety by reducing the number and severity of angle crashes. So shown here is the layout of a standard at-grade expressway intersection on top, along with the layout of an RCI on the bottom. So in an RCI, vehicles on the main line, they can just drive like they normally would. They can make their left turns, their through movements, and their right turns. But vehicles on the crossroad, they have a little bit different operations to deal with. They can make a right turn normally, just like they would at a standard intersection. But if they want to make a through movement, or if they want to make a left turn, they're going to need to utilize this U-turn that's been added into the median on the main line. So the travel distance increases a bit for these cross-street vehicles making throughs or lefts, but their travel time actually doesn't change too much. You only need to find gaps in mainline traffic in one direction at a time, as opposed to two directions at a time. So this intersection design, it eliminates vehicles on the crossroad from heading straight through the intersection. And so the likelihood of a right angle or a T-bone crash is reduced. And it can be hard to judge gaps in two directions on a divided road at the same time, which kind of makes these standard expressway intersections somewhat dangerous. So there's a bunch of RCIs on our roads, as shown in this chart. There's several dozen more planned. They're getting more and more popular in Minnesota. And we did a safety evaluation a few years back on RCIs in Minnesota, but we only had 8 locations available to look at the time. And there were safety benefits found with the reduced conflict intersections. And they are considered a safety alternative or a safety treatment. So now that we have so many more on our roads, we kind of wanted to do another evaluation to determine if we're seeing those same safety benefits that we hope for, and if we should still consider these RCIs as safety alternatives. So real quick, we did 3 types of analysis. We pulled crashes and traffic volumes at RCIs, both before and after they were installed, and compared the crash rates before and after. We compared crash rates at similar intersections where we would potentially install an RCI to the RCIs itself, compared the crash rates at those different intersections. And we also compared crash rates at the RCIs versus rural high-speed signalized intersections and low-volume interchanges. And we focused on certain crash types. Fatal and serious injury and angle crashes are kind of the targets for these RCIs. But we also looked at side swipes and rear ends and then overall crashes. And just to briefly touch on the results, here's the before-after results at the RCIs. We're seeing huge benefits from a safety perspective, with large decreases in fatal and serious injuries, as well as in angle crashes. You see that there is an increase in rear end crashes at these intersection types, and no big difference in the total number of crashes. So we're kind of swapping high severity crashes with low severity crashes, and that meets our safety goals. So you're no less likely really to get in a crash at an RCI as you would at another intersection type, but you're much less likely to die or get severely injured. So we consider that a win for safety. So we did this evaluation. We wrote up a whole report and put that on our website here. If you're interested in reading the full evaluation, it's here. So the desired audience for this evaluation was other DOTs, counties, city engineers, researchers, anyone interested in the detailed safety performance of these intersections. I'll just scroll through this incredibly fast. Hopefully no one gets too seasick. The report's somewhat long and kind of gets technical in some spots. So it's definitely not for everybody. It's obviously, it has all the information we wanted to convey with all the descriptions and all the reasons for why we did the different types of analysis we did. But again, not everyone wants to read a 60-page report. And there are a lot of, as I mentioned, there's a lot of these intersections planned for the next few years in Minnesota, and we want to get the general public on board. A lot of times there's pushback when a new or different intersection type is proposed, and we really want to communicate that these have big safety benefits and there's big safety results with these intersections. So we want to get people on board. We want people to want these intersections, or at least be okay when one's recommended for the area. And a detailed report like this is not the way to get many people interested in the safety benefits. Hence, why we thought a story map would be a good way to go. So it's a way to present the evaluation results more clearly. We're working on some other public engagement tools for RCIs, but the story map could be a part of that. So story maps are an ArcGIS application that allows you to do exactly what it says. You can tell a story using maps, as well as graphics and other multimedia content. And there's some really cool ones out there you can explore. They have all sorts of features. So I'd recommend looking around at the galleries of story maps. Now, before I get into mine, I want to show a pretty neat one that OTAT, the Office of Transit and Active Transportation, put together last year, looking at pet bike counts in 2020. So I'll kind of skip around. They used maps over time. Of course, they're not going to load very well when I'm presenting, but you can kind of scroll the different time periods and they'll show, pet and bike information that they wanted to show over time. So you can compare, see how things changed over time. They also had a cool interactive sliding image, so showing the weather impacts on the data they're kind of showing. So definitely a lot of different cool little features you can include in the story map to make it more interactive and just tell a better story than a regular research paper would do. So I'll go to my story map here, and basically my method to developing the story map was basically take the report I wrote, copy it into the story map, and cut out a bunch of parts that a non-technical reader would not care about. So I added a bunch of pictures to try and tell the story better and make it more interesting to look at. Added a bunch of graphics to try and replace as much text as I could, and converted a lot of the data that was in tables, try to put them into charts, make it a little more easy to read. I'm just going to scroll through mine here. So title page here, or title image. You can include a picture if you want, some text, some pictures about what RCIs are. Any of the images here, if you really want to look at the image, you can click on it, expand it a bit so you can look closer. But these aren't obviously the most detailed images, so not super applicable here. Again, put a lot of graphics in to describe the operations at RCIs, as opposed to big blocks of text that were in the report. Some images of what they look like, different aspects of them. Here's an image of someone driving in an RCI, a view from the U-turn, and you can click on it, look at it a little more detail. I didn't have a ton of images of these, but if I had more, I would have included them, believe me. Now, I talked about the locations, that chart there. Here's my one GIS aspect that I included in my story map, a simple map that has the locations and the construction year of the RCIs that were included in the study. So pretty proud of myself for making this, but I'm sure anyone here could do something a little more powerful. So include that in there. Some description about some of the locations, talked about the different analysis types. Again, you can click on the image, it'll blow up a bit. Try to build these images for the story map so I can try and replace some of the text. Some descriptions of the first analysis type and then the results in the chart format. I did have one table in there. Not going to go anything here in not going to go into too much detail on anything here, just kind of giving a scroll through. Discussion of the results, the second type of analysis, and the results. Made a chart for these results as opposed to a bunch of different tables. The third type of analysis, and then the chart with the important results, as well as some description of the results. Then I made some pictures that kind of showed where crashes were happening at standard layout intersections versus where they're happening at RCIs. So if you wanted to know where the angles are happening or where rear end crashes were happening and where they're happening now, this kind of shows the change in the patterns of crashes at the intersections with RCIs versus those without. So you can really look at those if you wanted to. And then a quick summary of the results and a link to where you can find the reports. And that was basically my story map. So I've gotten some feedback actually since this went out and was published publicly that there's still too much text. So I might need to make some more cuts. The word count on the report was about 11,000. The word count on this is about 2,500. So I was able to cut about 3/4 of the text to tell the same story. Obviously, there's more detail in the report for those who care. But this story map is where I direct people to start if they're interested in a higher level of the study. And I showed you where the full evaluation is. The story map's linked right there on the same page. This is available for anyone to look at. So this is where I would point most people to if I wanted to share the results of this evaluation. So just to jump into the editing side of the story map, you can add all sorts of things. Like I said, mine's pretty simple, but there's some really cool story maps out there. Again, I recommend people go out and look at them. Very easy to build. You basically add content. You can add text. You can add a button that has a link on it. You can add separators to break up your text. Maps, like I showed, I just had the one simple map, but any maps you have, you can put them right in here, make this thing a little more dynamic. Images, if you have a whole bunch of images, you can put them into a gallery. You can add videos, audio recordings of yourself or whatever. You can embed anything. You can do those cool swiping images. You can add a timeline. I'll just show how easy it is to put something in here. I'll click on a timeline, click on what layout style I want, and then boom, there's a timeline. I can write whatever I want. This is today. This is later. And I can build more and more on the timeline if I want. What else can you add? You can add slideshows, sidecars. The OTAT one kind of had some of these. Or a full map tour if you had a lot of information to share. You can change the layout. Super easy. Change the cover style if I wanted to be smaller or bigger like I had. You can add some navigation tools. Change the theme real quick. They've got a few in here. I think you can load a custom theme if you wanted to. If you wanted it to be a little darker, a little more moody, you could go all black with the white text, whatever you're feeling. Add some custom logos. You can preview what it's going to look like on different types of devices. So you could see what's it going to look like on a phone, in portrait mode, or in landscape mode, same with a tablet or a computer or full screen. So like I said, my GIS skills are kind of basic at this point, so I'm sure anyone here could have made something more powerful. But Bob and the other GIS gurus here were very helpful in getting this reviewed, giving me comments, making sure that the metadata was all correct. So making this story map was very easy. I highly recommend it. I think the product came out pretty well, pretty easy to use, a better way to convey our information than a big PDF or Word doc. I'm going to jump back to the slides real quick. Back to RCIs. Again, the main reason I was asked to talk today was about that story map I put together and its benefits. But as a MnDOT employee, you might get asked about RCIs. Why are we building these crazy things on the road? So if you remember one thing about RCIs, it's that they're improving safety by reducing high severity angle crashes. So here I just have some numbers from our before-after study. On top is the kind of T-bone angle crashes we had at standard intersections in the before period of our before-after, and then below is in the after period. This is over the same time period, so we're kind of comparing apples to apples a bit. But before the RCIs were installed, we had 102 of these types of crashes at these intersections. After, we only had 2, and that was a result of people trying to maneuver incorrectly through the intersection. So these type of crashes usually don't turn out very well, they're just not happening anymore. So that is all I had. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, everyone can go get lunch.